The crystalline palace floated in the darkness of space like a frozen tear. Inside its massive halls stood representatives from hundreds of worlds. Each one had traveled across the galaxy to witness what many called the trial of the century. The air hummed with translated voices as species of every shape and size discussed the human who stood in the center of the chamber. Jake Mitchell stood with his hands bound by blue energy restraints. The light from them cast shadows across his face, but he did not look down. His brown hair was cut short in the military style he had never quite abandoned. His eyes scanned the crowd without fear. He'd been a Marine before becoming a diplomat, and that training showed in the way he held himself. Straight back, level gaze, calm breathing. Above him on a throne of living crystal sat Queen Lysara. Her skin was pale blue and seemed to shimmer like water under moonlight. Her eyes had no pupils, but glowed with a soft white light. She wore robes that flowed like liquid silver. Behind her stood dozens of advisors and guards, each one as emotionless as carved stone. The Valtharian Empire controlled 70 star systems. Their military was the strongest in the known galaxy. Their technology was centuries beyond most other species, and they had ruled with cold logic for 10,000 years. They believed emotions were diseases, weaknesses that primitive species had failed to evolve past. A tall alien with 6 arms rose from the assembly. His voice boomed through the chamber as translators converted his words into hundreds of languages at once. He pointed one clawed finger at Jake. The human stands accused of the highest crime under the sacred accord. He has infected Princess Kira with the human disease of emotion. He has weaponized feelings of attachment and loyalty. He has corrupted a member of the royal bloodline. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some species hissed. Others clicked their mandibles in agreement. A few remained silent, but their posture showed hostility. Jake had expected this. Earth was new to the galactic community. Humanity had only made first contact 3 years ago. They were the newcomers, the unknowns. And now they were the accused. Another alien approached the center. This one was smaller, with skin like polished obsidian. She spoke in a voice that sounded like wind through hollow trees. We have studied the humans extensively. Their history is written in blood and betrayal. They wage wars over ideas. They manipulate each other with promises and threats. They use love as a weapon and loyalty as a chain. This one, called Jake Mitchell, is no different. He saw an opportunity in the princess, and he took it. Jake wanted to speak, but the energy restraints tightened around his wrists when he moved. The message was clear. He would speak only when permitted. So he stood and listened as species after species described humanity as dangerous, manipulative, emotional, unstable. A being made of what looked like living gas floated forward. Its voice was like static. They cry when they are sad. They laugh when they are happy. They rage when they are wronged. These responses serve no logical purpose. Yet the humans claim they make them stronger. They claim emotions give them meaning. But we know the truth. Emotions are chaos, and chaos leads to destruction. The testimonies continued for what felt like hours. Each one painted humans as threats to galactic stability. Each one used examples from Earth history. The wars, the conflicts, the times when human emotions had led to violence or suffering. None of them mentioned the times when those same emotions had led to heroism or sacrifice. Finally, the 6-armed prosecutor turned to Jake. Does the human wish to defend himself? The energy restraints loosened slightly. Jake took a slow breath before speaking. His voice was steady and clear. I do. Then speak. Tell us why you corrupted the princess. Tell us what you hope to gain for your primitive species. Jake looked up at Queen Lysara. Her glowing eyes met his. There was no warmth there. No anger either. Just cold evaluation. I never asked Princess Kira to care about me. I never asked her to feel anything. All I did was treat her with kindness. I answered her questions honestly. I shared stories about my life and my people. I showed her that emotions are not weapons. They are what make us human. The prosecutor laughed. It sounded like grinding metal. You admitted then. You exposed her to your emotional poison. You knew it would affect her. You knew she would become attached. Jake shook his head. I knew she was curious. I knew she wanted to understand us. I treated her the same way I would treat anyone, with respect and honesty. If that is a crime, then I am guilty. But I will not apologize for it. The chamber erupted in noise. Aliens shouted in dozens of languages. Some demanded immediate punishment. Others called for humanity to be expelled from the galactic community. A few remained silent, but their body language showed they agreed with the majority. Queen Lysara raised one hand. The noise stopped instantly. Every being in the chamber turned to face her. She rose from her throne and descended the steps slowly. Each footfall echoed in the sudden silence. She stopped 10 feet from Jake and studied him like a scientist examining a specimen. You claim you did nothing wrong. Jake met her gaze without flinching. I claim I did what any decent person would do. I was kind to someone who showed interest in understanding my people. I do not see how that deserves death. The queen tilted her head slightly. You do not understand our ways. Emotions are not neutral. They are corruption. They cloud judgment. They lead to irrational decisions. My daughter was pure before she met you. Now she asks questions that have no logical answers. She seeks experiences that serve no purpose. She has been damaged by exposure to your nature. Jake felt anger rising in his chest, but he pushed it down. Getting emotional now would only prove their point. You call emotions damage. I call your coldness imprisonment. You have locked away part of what makes life worth living. You exist, but you do not live. You think, but you do not feel. And you call that evolution. The chamber went silent again. This time, it was not the silence of order. It was the silence of shock. No one had ever spoken to the Valtherian queen like that. Not in 10,000 years of rule. The prosecutor moved forward quickly. The human insults our entire civilization. This proves his dangerous nature. We must silence. The queen had spoken. The prosecutor stepped back immediately. She continued to stare at Jake. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then she spoke again. You believe we are incomplete. I believe you have denied yourselves something fundamental. Something that makes existence meaningful. And what is that? Jake took a breath. Connection. Real connection with others. Not just cooperation or alliance, but caring about someone because they matter to you. Not because they are useful, but because they are important. The queen was quiet for several seconds. Then she turned and walked back to her throne. She sat down and placed her hands on the armrests. The glow in her eyes seemed to intensify. The human has admitted his crime. He has confessed to exposing Princess Kira to emotional infection. The penalty for such a crime is death. Earth's diplomatic mission will be terminated. Humanity will be marked as a dangerous species. All contact will be forbidden. She raised her hand to signal the guards. Jake felt the restraints tighten. This was it. He had failed. Earth would be alone in the galaxy. Cut off. Branded as threats. But then something happened that no one expected. The massive doors at the far end of the chamber burst open with a sound like thunder. 6 months earlier, Jake Mitchell stepped off the transport ship onto Valtheria Prime for the first time. The planet was beautiful in a cold way. Everything was perfectly organized. Buildings rose in mathematical patterns. Streets formed perfect grids. Even the plants in the gardens grew in precise arrangements. It looked more like a computer simulation than a living world. Ambassador Williams walked beside Jake as they moved through the spaceport. The older man had gray hair and tired eyes. He had been negotiating with alien species for 2 years now, and it showed. Remember what I told you, Jake. The Valtherians do not do small talk. They do not joke. They do not show appreciation or disappointment. Everything is pure logic with them. Do not try to make friends. Just do your job and stay professional. Jake nodded. He understood. This was not a social visit. Earth needed allies. The galaxy was dangerous and humanity was weak. The Valtherians had the strongest military. If Earth could form an alliance, it would mean safety, protection, a chance to grow. A delegation of Valtherians waited for them at the gate. They all looked similar. Pale blue skin, glowing eyes, expressionless faces. One of them stepped forward. Welcome to Valtheria Prime. I am Coordinator Thane. You will be housed in the diplomatic sector. Princess Kira has been assigned to observe your delegation and report on human customs. This is standard procedure for new species. Ambassador Williams bowed slightly. We are honored by the attention. We hope to build a strong relationship between our peoples. The coordinator did not respond to the sentiment. He simply turned and began walking. The humans followed. Jake noticed how quiet everything was. No one laughed. No one raised their voice. People moved through the streets like machines on predetermined paths. The diplomatic quarters were comfortable but sterile. White walls. Simple furniture. Everything functional. Nothing decorative. Jake unpacked his few belongings and tried to ignore the feeling of being watched. He knew there were cameras everywhere. The Valtherians would study every move the humans made. The next morning, Princess Kira arrived. She was younger than Jake expected. Maybe 20 in human years, though he had no idea how Valtherian aging worked. She wore a simple gray uniform and carried a data tablet. Her glowing eyes scanned the room before settling on Jake. You are Jake Mitchell, former military, now serving as cultural liaison. Your file says you lost a sibling during the Unification War on Earth. Jake was surprised they knew that much. He nodded slowly. Yes, my sister Amy. She died in the bombing of New Chicago. I joined the military after that. Fought for 3 years until the war ended and Earth united under one government. Kira typed something on her tablet. Interesting. You fought because of emotional attachment to your deceased sibling. This is irrational. The war would have proceeded the same with or without your participation. Jake felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his voice calm. It mattered to me. I wanted to make sure her death meant something. I wanted to help build a world where that kind of violence would not happen again. Kira tilted her head slightly. It was the first non-mechanical movement Jake had seen from any Valtherian. You believe your actions gave meaning to her. Death, I believe fighting for something you care about is never meaningless. She wrote more notes. Then she looked up again. I will observe your delegation for the next several months. I am to learn about human behavior and determine if your species is compatible with galactic civilization. Please continue your normal activities. Over the following weeks, Kira became a constant presence. She watched everything. She asked questions about every human behavior she witnessed. Why did Ambassador Williams smile when greeting people? Why did the technical staff joke with each other during breaks? Why did the medical officer cry when she received a message from home? Jake found himself answering most of her questions. The others in the delegation were uncomfortable around Kira. They found her cold observation unsettling. But Jake had spent years working with people from different cultures on Earth. He understood that different did not mean wrong. One afternoon, Kira found Jake in the garden area of the diplomatic quarters. He was sitting on a bench looking at a picture on his datapad. She approached without making a sound. "What are you doing?" Jake looked up. He had gotten used to her sudden appearances, remembering. Today would have been my sister Amy's birthday. I like to look at old pictures on days like this. Kira sat down beside him. She looked at the image on the screen. It showed a young woman with dark hair and a bright smile. She was standing on a beach with her arm around a younger Jake. This serves no practical purpose. She is deceased. Looking at her image does not change that fact. Jake smiled sadly. No, it does not. But it helps me remember who she was, what she cared about. It keeps her alive in my memory. Memory is simply data storage. You could access this information without emotional response. Jake shook his head. I could. But then I would just be remembering facts. This way, I remember how she made me feel. The love I had for her. The loss I felt when she died. Those feelings are part of who I am. They shaped me. Made me want to be better. Kira was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked something that surprised Jake. What is love? It was the first time she had asked about an emotion directly. Before she had only asked about behaviors. Jake thought carefully about his answer. Love is caring about someone so much that their happiness becomes important to you. Not because it benefits you, but because you want them to be happy. You would sacrifice for them, protect them, support them, even if it costs you something. This seems inefficient. Jake laughed softly. It probably is. But it is also what makes life worth living. Knowing that someone cares about you, that you matter to them, that you are not alone. Kira typed notes on her tablet, but her movements were slower than usual, like she was thinking about more than just recording data. Days turned into weeks. Kira continued her observations, but something changed. She started asking more personal questions, not just about human behavior in general, but about Jake specifically. What did he enjoy? What made him sad? What did he hope for the future? One day, she witnessed something that seemed to affect her deeply. A child from the human delegation had fallen and scraped her knee badly. The girl was crying. Her parents were working and could not come immediately. Jake had been walking past when he heard the crying. He stopped and knelt down beside the child. Hey there. Let me see that knee. The girl showed him through her tears. Jake pulled out a medical kit from his pack. He cleaned the wound gently and applied a bandage. Then he sat down beside her. My sister Amy used to fall down all the time when she was your age. She was always running too fast. But she would get back up and keep going. She was brave like that. The girl sniffled. Did it hurt when she fell? Probably. But she did not let it stop her. And you should not either. You are tough. This is just a little scrape. The girl wiped her eyes and nodded. Jake stayed with her until her parents arrived. He explained what happened and made sure she was okay. Then he continued on his way. Kira had watched the entire interaction. When Jake noticed her standing there, she approached him. Why did you help her? She's not your offspring. You have no obligation to her. Jake shrugged. She needed help. I can help. That is reason enough. But you gain nothing from it. I gain the knowledge that she feels better. That is enough. Kira stared at him for a long time. Her glowing eyes seemed brighter than usual. Then she asked something that made Jake realize how much had changed. Can you teach me to understand emotions? Not just observe them, but truly understand them. Jake smiled. I can try. But understanding emotions is not like learning facts. You have to experience them, feel them. Let yourself be affected by the world around you. Kira nodded slowly. Then, I wished to try and so began something that would change both of their lives forever. The prosecution continued their case against Jake with ruthless efficiency. They brought forward dozens of witnesses. Each one testified about the dangers of human emotion. Each one painted humanity as a threat to galactic stability. a reptilian ambassador from the Skrull Confederation, approached the center of the chamber. His scales reflected delight as he spoke. My species made contact with humans 2 years ago. At first they seemed friendly, cooperative, but we soon learned the truth. They use emotional appeals to manipulate negotiations. They tell stories designed to create sympathy. They make promises based on friendship rather than mutual benefit. We nearly signed a trade agreement that would have been completely one-sided in their favor. Only logical analysis saved us from their emotional manipulation. The crowd murmured in agreement. Jake wanted to point out that the Skrull had tried to cheat Earth in that same negotiation, that the humans had simply refused to be taken advantage of. But the restraints held him silent. Another witness came forward. This one was an artificial intelligence housed in a floating sphere. I have analyzed human communication patterns across 10,000 hours of recorded interactions. They consistently prioritize emotional content over logical argument. They make decisions based on feelings rather than optimal outcomes. They value abstract concepts like honor and loyalty over practical considerations like efficiency and profit. This makes them unpredictable and dangerous as galactic partners. The prosecutor gestured toward Jake, and this human Jake Mitchell is perhaps the most dangerous of all. He does not manipulate through obvious means. He does not make grand promises or threaten violence. Instead, he uses the most insidious weapon in the human arsenal. Kindness. The word hung in the air like an accusation. Several aliens in the crowd hissed or clicked in what Jake assumed was agreement. Kindness. A simple act that costs nothing but achieves everything. By being kind to Princess Kira, he made her lower her defenses. By answering her questions honestly, he made her trust him. By showing her human emotions, he infected her with the desire to experience those emotions herself. And now the damage is done. The Princess of Valtheria has been corrupted by human sentiment. Queen Lysara watched from her throne. Her expression had not changed, but Jake thought he detected something in the way she held herself. Tension, maybe. Or concern. The prosecutor turned to address the Queen directly. Your Majesty, we have presented overwhelming evidence. This human has committed the crime of emotional contamination. The sacred accord is clear. Such crimes must be punished with death. Furthermore, we recommend that all human diplomatic missions be terminated immediately. The species should be quarantined to their home system until they can prove they have evolved past their emotional weaknesses. The Queen nodded slowly. Your recommendations are noted. Now the human will give his full testimony. Then we will render judgment. The energy restraints loosened. Jake felt the circulation return to his hands. He stepped forward and looked up at the assembled aliens. Hundreds of eyes stared back at him. Most showed hostility. Some showed curiosity. A few showed something he could not identify. You have all spoken about emotions as if they are diseases, as if feeling things makes us weak or dangerous. But you are wrong. Emotions are not our weakness. They are our greatest strength. The crowd erupted in noise. Shouts of disagreement in dozens of languages. The Queen raised her hand and silence fell again. Explain yourself, human. Jake took a breath. Every great thing humanity has ever achieved came from emotion. We explored our world because of curiosity. We built cities because of hope. We created art because of the need to express beauty. We formed families because of love. We fought against tyranny because of anger at injustice. We sacrificed for each other because of loyalty and compassion. He paused and looked around the chamber. Yes, emotions can lead to conflict. Yes, we have fought wars. Yes, we have made mistakes. But we have also done incredible things because we care. We save strangers from burning buildings. We give food to the hungry, even when we barely have enough ourselves. We mourn for people we have never met when tragedy strikes. We celebrate the victories of others as if they were our own. The prosecutor laughed. You described chaos, irrational behavior, actions that serve no logical purpose. Jake shook his head. I describe what it means to be alive, to truly live, not just exist. You want to know what I did to Princess Kira? I will tell you. I treated her like a person. I answered her questions. I shared my experiences. I showed her that there is more to existence than cold logic and efficient systems. He turned to face Queen Lysara directly. I told her about my sister Amy, how she died, how I grieved, how that grief motivated me to fight for a better world. I showed her a picture and explained why I look at it on her birthday. Not because it changes anything, but because it keeps a memory alive in my heart. The Queen leaned forward slightly. And what did my daughter say when you told her these things? Jake remembered that day in the garden. Kira sitting beside him on the bench. The questions in her glowing eyes. She asked me what love was. So I told her. I said love is caring about someone so much that their happiness becomes important to you. That you would sacrifice for them, not because you gain something, but because you want them to be okay. And then what happened? Jake met her gaze. She asked me to teach her to understand emotions. Not just observe them, but feel them. I told her I would try. And I did. I showed her human art, music, stories. I explained why we create things that serve no practical purpose. I told her about friendship and loyalty, and hope and sorrow. The prosecutor moved forward again. You admit it. You deliberately exposed her to emotional content, knowing it would affect her. Jake turned to face him. I shared my culture with someone who wanted to understand it. I treated her with respect and kindness. If that makes me a criminal, then yes. I am guilty. The chamber filled with noise again. Aliens arguing with each other. Some demanded immediate execution. Others seemed unsure. The prosecutor raised his voice above the chaos. The human has confessed. There is nothing more to discuss. We must proceed to sentencing. But one voice cut through the noise. It was Queen Lysara. She stood from her throne and descended the steps. The chamber fell silent as she approached Jake. She stopped just a few feet from him. You truly believe emotions make you stronger. Jake did not hesitate. I know they do. Without emotion, we are just machines, processing information, following programs. But with emotion, we become something more. We become beings who can choose to care, to hope, to love. That is what makes us human. The Queen studied him for a long moment. Then she spoke so quietly that only Jake could hear. My daughter stopped coming to council meetings 3 months ago. She said they were inefficient. But I knew the truth. She found them cold, empty. She wanted something more, something we could not give her. Jake said nothing. He could see something in the Queen's eyes that he had not seen before. Uncertainty, maybe, or pain. She stood in silence for several more seconds. Then she turned and walked back to her throne. She sat down and placed her hands on the armrests. The glow in her eyes seemed brighter than before. Jake Mitchell, you stand accused of corrupting Princess Kira through exposure to human emotions. You have admitted to this crime. The Sacred Accord demands death as punishment. Furthermore, all human diplomatic missions will be terminated. Your species will be quarantined and marked as dangerous. She raised her hand to signal the guards. Jake felt the energy restraints tighten again. This was the end. He had failed. Earth would be alone. But at least he had told the truth. The guards moved forward. The prosecutor smiled in satisfaction. The assembled aliens watched in silence. Then the doors at the far end of the chamber exploded inward with a sound like a thunderclap. Everyone in the chamber turned toward the doors. Guards reached for weapons. Advisors moved to protect the Queen. The prosecutor stepped back in surprise. and Jake felt his heart stop for a moment. Princess Kira walked through the broken doors. But she looked nothing like the observer who had studied the human delegation months ago. She wore a simple blue dress in the human style. Her hair was no longer pulled back in the severe Valtherian fashion, but fell loose around her shoulders. And most shocking of all, she was smiling. The guards moved to intercept her, but she held up one hand. Stand down. I am Princess Kira, daughter of Queen Lysara. I invoke my right to speak at this tribunal. The queen stood from her throne. Her glowing eyes were wide. It was the first time Jake had seen her show surprise. Kira, what have you done? Why are you dressed like that? Why are you here? Kira walked down the center aisle toward the platform where Jake stood. Every eye in the chamber followed her. The silence was absolute. Even the translators seemed to have stopped working for a moment. I am here because I will not let an innocent man die for the crime of showing me kindness. I am dressed like this because I have learned that there is more than one way to exist in this universe. And I am here to tell you all that everything you believe about emotions is wrong. The prosecutor found his voice. Princess, you have been contaminated. You are not thinking clearly. Please return to your quarters and let us handle this criminal. Kira stopped in front of the platform. She looked up at Jake and something passed between them. Recognition, understanding, connection. I am thinking more clearly than I ever have before. For 20 years, I existed in coldness. I followed rules. I processed information. I did everything a proper Valtherian should do. But I was not alive. I was simply running a program. She turned to face the assembled aliens. Then, I met Jake Mitchell. And he showed me something I had never known existed. He showed me what it means to care about someone. What it means to hope for something better. What it means to feel joy and sorrow and wonder. He did not manipulate me. He did not trick me. He simply treated me like I mattered. Queen Lysara descended from her throne. She moved toward her daughter slowly. Her voice was strained. Kira, please. You do not understand what you are saying. These emotions will pass. We can help you return to normal. Kira shook her head. No, mother. I do understand. For the first time in my life, I truly understand. You call emotions a disease. But living without them is the real sickness. We are not superior because we feel nothing. We are diminished. The queen stopped a few feet away from her daughter. For a moment, Jake saw something in her face. Pain. Real pain. The cold mask had cracked. You are my daughter. My youngest child. I cannot lose you to this human infection. Kira stepped forward and did something that shocked everyone in the chamber. She took her mother's hands. Physical contact between Valtherians was rare, reserved only for formal rituals. But this was not formal. This was personal. You are not losing me, mother. You are seeing me for the first time. The real me. The person I could have been all along if I had been allowed to feel. The queen stared at their joined hands. Her glow flickered like a candle in wind. I do not know how to be what you want me to be. Kira smiled gently. I do not want you to be anything except willing to listen. To consider that maybe we have been wrong. That maybe there is value in what we have denied ourselves. The prosecutor moved forward quickly. This is exactly what we want. About. The human has corrupted the princess completely. She speaks like one of them now. She dresses like them. She touches and smiles and shows emotion. This proves how dangerous they are. Kira released her mother's hands and turned to face the prosecutor. You want to execute Jake because he showed me kindness. Because he answered my questions honestly. Because he treated me with dignity and respect. If those things are crimes, then your laws are unjust. The crowd erupted in noise again. Some species shouted in agreement with the prosecutor. Others seemed uncertain. A few remained silent but watched with what looked like interest. The prosecutor pointed at Kira. You see, she defends him. She has been manipulated into loyalty. This is the human weapon in action. Jake finally found his voice. It is not manipulation. It is friendship. It is what happens when you treat someone well and they appreciate it. You act like caring about someone is a trick. But it is the most honest thing in the universe. Kira turned to look at Jake. Her glowing eyes met his. He is right. I care about Jake because he gave me something no one else ever has. He made me feel like I mattered. Not as an observer. Not as a tool for gathering data. But as a person with thoughts and feelings of my own. She looked back at the assembled aliens. I have spent the last 3 months learning about human culture. I have read their books, listened to their music, watched their art, and I have learned that emotions are not weaknesses. They are what give life meaning. They are what make existence more than just a series of logical processes. Queen, Lasara spoke quietly. And what would you have us do? Abandon 10,000 years of civilization. Embrace chaos and irrationality. Kira shook her head. I would have you open your minds to possibility. To the idea that maybe we have been incomplete. That maybe there is a balance between logic and emotion that we have never explored. The chamber had gone silent again. Everyone waited to see what would happen next. The tension was unbearable. Jake could feel his heart pounding in his chest. Then Kira did something that would be remembered for generations. She walked up onto the platform where Jake stood. The guards moved to stop her, but the queen raised a hand. They froze. Kira stopped directly in front of Jake. She looked up at him with those glowing eyes. And then she smiled. A real, genuine smile that transformed her face. Jake Mitchell, you are the first person who ever made me feel like I was more than just my function. You showed me beauty and joy and wonder. You gave me the greatest gift anyone has ever given me. You showed me how to be alive. And then she embraced him. It was a simple human gesture. Arms around shoulders. Bodies close. But in that moment, it meant everything. A Valtherian princess. Royalty from the most powerful empire in the galaxy. Holding a human man in front of hundreds of witnesses. The silence that fell over the chamber was absolute. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the prosecutor stood frozen. This had never happened before in recorded history. A Valtherian showing physical affection. A royal family member choosing emotion over duty. Jake felt Kira trembling slightly. He realized she was afraid. Afraid of what would happen next. Afraid of her mother's judgment. But she had done it anyway. She had chosen to show what she felt. He lifted his hand slowly and returned the embrace. Gently, respectfully, the way you would hold someone who mattered to you. Someone you cared about. The moment stretched. Time seemed to stop. And in that silence, everyone in the chamber understood. This was not manipulation. This was not corruption. This was simply two beings who had found connection in a cold universe. This was what it meant to care. When Kira finally stepped back, her eyes were bright. Jake thought she might be crying, though he had never seen Valtherian cry before. She turned to face her mother one last time. If you execute Jake, then you must execute me too. Because I am guilty of the same crime. I feel emotions. I care about him. And I will not apologize for it. The queen stood motionless. Her face was unreadable. The glow in her eyes had dimmed to almost nothing. For a long moment she said nothing. Then slowly she lifted her gaze to look at her daughter. Really look at her. And Jake saw something change in the queen's expression. The mask cracked further. And beneath, it was something no one expected to see. Understanding. Queen Lasara stood motionless as she looked at her daughter. The entire chamber held its breath, waiting for judgment. The prosecutor moved forward, ready to demand execution. The guards prepared to act. and Jake felt the energy restraints tighten around his wrists. But then something happened that no one could have predicted. The queen descended from her platform and walked toward Kira, not as a ruler approaching a subject, but as a mother approaching her child. She stopped just in front of the princess, and for the first time in anyone's memory, her face showed something other than cold logic. When you were young, you asked me why we do not smile. I told you it was because smiling serves no purpose, that it wastes energy, that it communicates nothing that words cannot express more efficiently. The queen's voice was quiet, but everyone in the chamber could hear it. The translators worked overtime to convert her words into hundreds of languages. But looking at you now, I realize I was wrong. Your smile communicates something I could never say with words alone. It shows me that you are happy, truly happy, and I have never seen you happy before. She lifted one hand slowly and touched Kira's face. The gesture was awkward, uncertain, like someone learning a new language. But it was genuine. I thought I was protecting you by teaching you to be strong, to be logical, to never let emotion cloud your judgment. But instead I was teaching you to be empty. And I did not even realize it until this human showed you another way. The queen turned to face Jake. Her glowing eyes met his. Jake Mitchell, you stand accused of corrupting my daughter with emotion, of weaponizing kindness to manipulate her, of committing a crime against the sacred accord. But I see now that the only crime committed here was mine. The chamber erupted in shocked whispers. The prosecutor stepped forward quickly. Your Majesty, you cannot mean that. The human is guilty. The evidence is overwhelming. We must silence. The queen's voice cut through the noise like a blade. Everyone fell quiet immediately. She continued speaking. For 10,000 years, the Valtharian Empire has ruled through logic and efficiency. We have built the strongest military in the galaxy. We have conquered 70 star systems. We have achieved technological superiority over nearly every known species. And we have done it all by denying ourselves the supposed weakness of emotion. She paused and looked around the chamber at the assembled aliens. But what have we actually achieved? We exist, but we do not live. We function, but we do not thrive. We have power, but we have no joy, no wonder, no hope. We are machines pretending to be alive. The prosecutor tried to speak again, but the queen raised her hand. I have watched my daughter transform over these past months. I told myself it was contamination, corruption, but I was lying to myself. The truth is she has become more than she was, not less. She asks questions now that have no logical answers because she is searching for meaning. She seeks experiences that serve no practical purpose because she wants to feel alive. She has grown in ways I never allowed myself to grow. The queen turned back to Kira. You asked me earlier what I would have you do, and I did not have an answer. But I have one now. I would have you be exactly what you are. A person who feels and cares and hopes, because that is what makes you truly alive. Tears ran down Kira's face. The first tears anyone in that chamber had seen from a Valtharian. She tried to speak, but her mother continued. And if you are willing, I would like you to teach me. Show me what this human showed you. Help me understand what we have denied ourselves for so long. The prosecutor's voice rose in desperation. Your Majesty, this is madness. You would abandon our entire civilization for the sake of human emotions. You would throw away 10,000 years of progress. I must protest. Then protest all you wish. The queen's voice was sharp now, commanding. This was not a mother speaking. This was a ruler. I am Queen of Valtharia. I have made my decision. Jake Mitchell is acquitted of all charges. Furthermore, I propose a new treaty. The Accord of Understanding. It will recognize emotional diversity as a strength of galactic civilization rather than a weakness. She looked at Jake. Humanity will not be quarantined. Your diplomatic missions will continue. And I invite Earth to share its culture and philosophy with any species willing to listen. Because you have something we need. Something we have denied ourselves for too long. The chamber exploded in noise. Some species cheered. Others protested. The prosecutor looked like he might collapse. The guards did not know what to do. It was chaos. Beautiful, wonderful chaos. The Queen raised both hands and the room gradually fell silent. I understand that many of you disagree with this decision. That you believe emotions are dangerous and illogical. You are free to maintain that belief. But you are not free to impose it on others. The sacred accord will be revised. No species will be punished for emotional expression. No being will be executed for showing kindness. She turned to face the prosecutor directly. If you cannot accept this, then you may leave. But I will not change my mind. I have seen what coldness costs us, and I will not pay that price any longer. The prosecutor stared at her for a long moment. Then he bowed his head and stepped back. He had lost, and he knew it. Jake felt the energy restraints release. He rubbed his wrists where they had held him. Kira immediately came to his side. Are you all right? Jake smiled. I am now. Thank you for what you did. For standing up for me. For telling the truth even when it was dangerous. Kira smiled back. You showed me how to be brave. How to care about something more than my own safety. I was only following your example. The Queen approached them both. She looked at Jake carefully. I owe you an apology, human. I almost executed you for giving my daughter the greatest gift she has ever received. I let fear and tradition blind me to the truth. Jake shook his head. You were protecting your people the only way you knew how. I understand that. What matters is that you were willing to listen. To change your mind when you saw the truth. The Queen nodded slowly. Then she did something that shocked even Kira. She extended her hand toward Jake. A calm, human gesture of greeting and respect. Will you help us? Will you teach us what you taught my daughter? Not just Valtherians, but any species willing to learn. Jake took her hand and shook it firmly. I will do everything I can. Over the next several hours, the chamber gradually emptied. Some species left in anger. Others stayed to discuss the implications of the new treaty. A few approached Jake directly, asking questions about human culture and emotion. Ambassador Williams appeared from the observation area where he had been forced to watch the trial. He looked exhausted and relieved. Jake, you did it. You actually did it. Earth has allies now. Real allies. And you changed galactic law in the process. Jake looked at Kira standing beside him. At Queen Lysara speaking with other alien leaders. At the way the entire chamber had transformed from a courtroom to something more like a gathering. I did not do it alone. Kira did more than I ever could. She had the courage to show them the truth. Days passed. The news of what happened in the Valtherian court spread across the galaxy. Some species rejected it outright. Others were curious. A few began sending delegations to Earth, asking to learn more about human culture. Jake prepared to return home. His mission was complete. More than complete. Earth would not be isolated. Humanity would be welcomed into the galactic community. And the foundation had been laid for something new. Something better. On the morning of his departure, Kira found him in the garden where they had first really talked months ago. She sat down on the bench beside him. I have asked my mother if I can come with you. To Earth. She has agreed. I am to be Valtheria's first ambassador of emotional understanding. Jake smiled. Earth will be lucky to have you. Though I should warn you, we are messy. Chaotic. Nothing like the order you are used to hear. Kira laughed. It was a sound Jake had heard only a few times before. Each time it made him happy. Good. I have had enough order to last a lifetime. I want to experience everything. Music and art and laughter and even sadness. All of it. The full range of what it means to be alive. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Kira spoke again. Thank you, Jake, for everything. For being patient with my questions. For sharing your pain and your joy. For showing me that there is more to existence than logic and duty. Jake shook his head. You do not need to thank me. You did all the hard work. I just answered questions. You were the one brave enough to embrace something completely foreign to everything you had been taught. They boarded the transport together later that day. As the ship left Valtherian space, Jake looked back at the crystalline palace floating against the stars. So much had changed. So much was still changing. Kira sat beside him, looking out the window at the stars streaming past. What will you do when we reach Earth? Jake thought about it. I will teach anyone willing to listen that kindness is not a weakness. That emotions are not weapons. That caring about others makes us stronger, not weaker. Just like someone once needed to teach you. Kira smiled, and I will help. We will show them together. The ship jumped to faster than light speed. Behind them, the Valtherian Empire was already beginning to change. Species that had hidden their emotions for centuries were starting to speak openly. Young Valtherians were asking questions their parents never dared ask. And across the galaxy, others watched and wondered. In the Grand Court, the silence had been fear. Uncertainty about what would come next. But now, as Jake A.